www.mysql.com. Don't get phished and go to some other website. And you notice that there's a variety of options here, all of which are very interesting. You've got the MySQL Community Server, which is essentially the database. You've got MySQL Workbench, which is the GUI tool. You've got a bunch of different database drivers for various different programming languages, C++, Java. I'm going to need Connector J. But you've also got this MySQL installer for Windows. And when you choose this one, especially the one that's got a 400 meg size download, that's actually going to contain all of those different options, and then you can pick and choose which ones you really want. So that's the one that I'm going to select. So just I'm on Microsoft Windows, 32-bit. That's going to work fine. I'm actually 64-bit, but that doesn't matter. I click download, and I believe that I've actually downloaded this already. And let me just take a look at my downloads folder. Do I have the MSI file? And look at that, MySQL installer version 8. So I'm just going to double click on that. The installer will kick off. And there's a couple of components that I want to install here. So I'm going to install the MySQL Community Server. I'm going to install MySQL Workbench, which is the GUI tool. I'm going to install Connector J, which is the driver that's going to allow my Java application to connect to MySQL. And I think I might install the MySQL command prompt, command line interface as well. So as the MySQL installer wizard comes up, you've got a number of different options for the installation here. I'm not going to begrudge anybody that chooses a full installation, but I'm going to have a custom installation myself because there's only a couple of pieces of this puzzle that I'm really interested in. I'm interested in the MySQL server. I'm also interested in the MySQL Workbench. Now, I'm going to install the MySQL shell as well. I don't know how often I'm going to use that, but I'm going to install it. I'm going to install Connector J. That's the JDBC driver that makes it possible for my Java programs to connect to the underlying database. And I think that's all. Now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 options here. Now, I don't like when it installs into program files. That bothers me greatly. I much prefer to just put things into a folder that doesn't have a space in it. Now, I do know that they've put their own space in here, but sometimes it messes things up with scripts. So I'm actually going to change the installation directory of all of these products to _MySQL and then whatever the product name is. That just makes it easier for me to find it on my file system, and to make sure that if I'm running a script that I don't have to worry about that space in the word program files. As I said, it does look like they put a space in just about every single name here, but it's one of the things I like to do. Plus, it's just going to make things a lot easier to find on my file system after installation. So I'll just do a quick verification, _MySQL, 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 and _MySQL. Okay, that's fantastic. I click the next button. Looks like those are all ready to install, and I will click execute. And within just a few moments, all of these will be installed. And there we go. The basic installation of these products are complete. Just a matter of clicking the next button, doing the basic configuration step. I'm going to configure this just as a standalone server. All of these basic options look good to me. Access through TCP/IP on port 3306. That typically becomes an important property when you're doing your connections. Definitely use strong encryption passwords. I'm not going to add any new users, but I will make password, all lowercase letters, the password for this development environment. And this is always nice, being able to configure the tool as a service on Windows. That way the service can start up automatically. And then if you need to stop and start it, you don't have to go to the command line. You can just go to Windows Services and doing the stopping and starting. So I'm going to accept that option and then execute the configuration. Maybe even take a look at the log file, just make sure that everything is working well. Notice everything's going into the _MySQL directory, which makes me very happy. And now it looks like the whole configuration is done. I'm going to click the Finish button. Everything looks good. And now I'd actually like to open up the MySQL workbench. Looks like it's opened up the MySQL shell for me. Don't need that. I'll take a look at my Windows program list. There's MySQL there. I think I'll move that up here. Looks a lot more handsome. From here, I'm going to start the MySQL workbench. It looks like it started the MySQL workbench for me anyways, but I'm going to just start from scratch. And one of the ways that I like to test my MySQL installation is just by creating a schema. So a lot of people wonder, how do you create a schema in MySQL? It's fairly straightforward. All you have to do is go into MySQL and start up that MySQL workbench. If you've just done a new installation, it's a great way just to validate that installation, make sure that it's running properly. Since MySQL is started, you can see that the workbench has an option to go to the basic default connection on port 3306, which I will do. I will double click, provide my password, which is all lowercase letters password. We get into the server management here, but what I want to do just to verify that I can connect and manipulate this database is go into this list for schemas and create a new schema. You see that sys is already there. I want to create one. Let's just say I wanted to do some Hibernate examples. Might create a schema called Hibernate examples. That's the basic command to do that. Maybe create one, who knows, called JPA examples. And I'm a Java developer. It would be wrong not to create one called maybe JDBC examples. So I'll create a final one. But there you go. Now I've gone in. I've created a couple of database schemas. I can even take a look, see that that sys schema has been created, and there are indeed a number of columns and tables inside there. So it looks like indeed I've got my MySQL workbench up and running. I can create schemas. I can connect to the MySQL database so that I know that everything is working. And there you go. That's how easy it is to create a schema in MySQL Workbench and connect to the underlying MySQL database server.